The docking bay of Nexus Station hummed with the mechanical precision of 1,000 different species technologies, welded together in an uneasy harmony that had taken decades to achieve. Commander Kai Thorne stepped off the transport shuttle, his boots echoing against the metal grating as he surveyed the sprawling neutral way station that floated in the void between human and alien territories. This would be his last mission. Kai adjusted the collar of his diplomatic uniform, the deep, blue fabric bearing insignia that would soon mean nothing. Earth's diplomatic corps was dissolving, its purpose fulfilled now that the war had officially ended 6 months ago. The brutal conflict between humanity and the Drakmari coalition had left both sides exhausted, their homeworlds scarred, their populations decimated. Peace had come not through victory, but through mutual devastation. Commander Thorne? A reedy voice interrupted his thoughts. A Zelthian administrator approached, its crystalline features reflecting the station's harsh lighting. Your charge awaits in Detention Block 7. Fair warning, she's been difficult. Kai nodded, following the administrator through corridors that reeked of recycled air and industrial lubricants. Nexus Station had served as neutral ground throughout the war, a place where prisoner exchanges and ceasefire negotiations had taken place. Now it felt like a tomb, echoing with the ghosts of failed diplomacy. They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each one more heavily fortified than the last. Energy barriers hummed to life and died as they approached, scanning for weapons, biocontaminants, concealed technology. The deeper they went, the more Kai understood why this particular prisoner required such precautions. She orchestrated the siege of Europa Colony, the administrator continued, its voice carrying the clinical detachment of someone who had seen too much war. 70,000 human casualties. Your people want her tried for war crimes, but her own government branded her a traitor first. Attempted to negotiate unauthorized peace talks, they say. Kai's jaw tightened. Europa Colony had been more than statistics to him. His sister Mira had been among the engineers working on the terraforming project. 23 years old, brilliant, full of dreams about building humanity's future among the stars. The Drakmari bombardment had turned those dreams to ash. They stopped before a reinforced door marked with alien script and human numerals. The administrator placed its hand on a scanner, and the door slid open with a mechanical sigh. The cell beyond was sparse but comfortable, more like a modest quarters than a prison. And there, seated on a narrow bed with her back straight and her hands folded, was the architect of his sister's death. Vexus Nalith was not what Kai had expected. The intelligence briefings had described a ruthless military strategist, a creature of scales and claws who had orchestrated humanity's darkest hours. Instead, he found himself looking at a woman, for lack of a better word, whose alien features carried an unmistakable weariness. Her skin bore the distinctive blue-silver hue of the Drakmari, marked with intricate patterns that denoted her former rank. Her eyes, large and opalescent, studied him with the same careful assessment he was giving her. Commander Thorne, she said, her voice carrying the melodic undertones of her species but speaking perfect standard. I've been expecting you, strategist Nalith. Kai kept his voice neutral, professional. I'm here to escort you to Drakmari Prime for your trial. Something flickered across her features, amusement perhaps, or resignation. My execution, you mean? My own people don't conduct trials for traitors, Commander. They conduct ceremonies. The administrator cleared its throat. Your transport departs in 4 hours. The prisoner's belongings are minimal. She refused most accommodations. As the door sealed behind them, leaving Kai alone with the woman who had haunted his nightmares, the weight of their shared history settled between them like a physical presence. She rose from the bed, her movements graceful despite the energy shackles around her wrists. I know what you're thinking, Vexus said quietly. Europa Colony. Your sister worked there, didn't she? I remember the personnel files. Kai's hands clenched into fists. Don't, Mira Thorne. 23. Atmospheric engineer, specializing in oxygen cultivation systems. Her voice remained steady, factual. I gave the order that killed her, Commander. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant hum of the station's life support systems and the weight of 70,000 ghosts. Why? The word escaped Kai's lips before he could stop it. Vexus met his gaze directly. Because I believed it would end the war faster. Because I thought if we hit you hard enough, humanity would surrender and both our species could stop dying. She paused, her opalescent eyes reflecting depths of emotion he hadn't expected. I was wrong about many things, Commander, but I won't apologize for trying to save lives, even if my methods were flawed. Kai stared at her, searching for the monster he'd imagined, but finding only a tired soldier who had made impossible choices in an impossible war. It disturbed him more than hatred would have. The transport ship Meridian was a sleek diplomatic vessel, designed for comfort during long journeys between star systems. Kai had requested it specifically for this mission. The 3-week journey to Drakmari Prime would be easier in civilized quarters than in a military prison transport. He told himself it was simple pragmatism, but as he watched Vexus examine her assigned cabin with quiet dignity, he wondered at his own motivations. The energy shackles can be removed during mealtimes, Kai said, standing in the doorway. Security protocols require them otherwise. Vexus nodded, settling onto the narrow bed. I appreciate the consideration, Commander. Many of your people would have preferred chains. Many of your people would have preferred a firing squad, Kai replied, then immediately regretted the harshness in his voice. To his surprise, Vexus smiled, a subtle expression that transformed her alien features. Touché. It seems we're both products of our respective mercy. The first few days passed in careful politeness. Kai brought her meals personally, unwilling to delegate such a sensitive task to the ship's minimal crew. They ate in silence initially, the weight of their shared history making conversation impossible. But as the parsecs rolled by, small cracks appeared in their mutual walls. Your sister, Vexus said during their 4th dinner together, picking at the Drakmari-compatible protein paste Kai had requisitioned. She was working on atmospheric processors? Kai's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Yes. I studied the Europa colony reports extensively before the attack. Her innovations in oxygen cultivation were remarkable. We have nothing comparable in Drakmari technology. She was brilliant, Kai said quietly. Always saw solutions where others saw problems. The irony wasn't lost on me, Vexus continued, her voice careful. We destroyed your colony to prevent terraforming technology from spreading. But in doing so, we eliminated one of the few minds capable of healing war-ravaged worlds. Kai set down his fork, studying her face. You sound like you regret it. I regret many things, Commander. But regret doesn't resurrect the dead. She met his eyes. Tell me about her, not the engineer, the sister. Something in her tone, a genuine curiosity mixed with what might have been compassion, made Kai's carefully maintained barriers waver. She used to collect music from old Earth. Ancient stuff, jazz, blues, classical symphonies. Said it helped her think about complex problems. Music as cognitive enhancement. Interesting. Vexus tilted her head. Drakmari use harmonic poetry for similar purposes. The rhythm helps organize chaotic thoughts. Harmonic poetry? For the first time since he'd known her, Vexus looked almost shy. Would you like me to demonstrate? Kai found himself nodding before he could think better of it. Vexus closed her eyes and began to speak in her native tongue, her melodic voice rising and falling in patterns that seemed to follow some internal music. The words were incomprehensible to Kai, but the rhythm was hypnotic, almost soothing. When she finished, the silence felt different, less hostile, more contemplative. What did it mean? Kai asked. It's about starlight reaching across impossible distances to touch alien worlds, she translated. A meditation on connection despite separation. Over the following days, their conversations deepened. Kai found himself sharing stories about his childhood on Mars, his decision to join the diplomatic corps, his dreams of a universe where different species could coexist peacefully. Vexus spoke of her life on Drakmari Prime, her rise through military ranks, her growing doubts about the war's purpose. "I had a bondmate," she admitted one evening as they watched the stars stream past through the observation deck's transparent aluminum windows. "Thex, they were killed in your retaliatory strike on Kepler Station." Kai felt his stomach drop. He remembered the mission briefings for Kepler, humanity's first major offensive against Drakmari infrastructure. "I'm sorry." Thex believed the war was wrong from the beginning. "They tried to convince me to seek peace negotiations earlier." Vexus's opalescent eyes reflected the starlight. "I told them we were too far committed to turn back, that sometimes soldiers must accept terrible costs for ultimate victory. And now I understand why they wept when I left for Europa Colony." Her voice cracked slightly. "They knew I was choosing duty over conscience. They died believing I had become something they couldn't love." The revelation hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Kai realized they were both survivors carrying the same crushing weight, the guilt of living when those they loved had perished, the agony of decisions that had seemed necessary, but now felt monstrous. "We're both ghosts," Kai said softly. "Haunted by choices we can't undo." Vexus turned to face him fully, and in her alien features he saw a reflection of his own pain. "Perhaps that's why we can bear each other's company, Commander. Ghosts understand other ghosts." That night, Kai lay awake in his cabin thinking about starlight and impossible distances, about music and poetry and the strange comfort of shared guilt. When he finally slept, he dreamed not of his sister's death but of Vexus's voice singing to the stars. The system malfunction began with a subtle vibration in the ship's hull, barely noticeable at first. Kai was reviewing navigation charts when the emergency klaxon started wailing, red lights bathing the command deck in crimson urgency. "Computer, report status," he commanded. "Primary fusion reactor experiencing cascade failure. Hyperdrive offline. Life support operating on backup power. Estimated duration, 72 hours. Kai's blood ran cold. They were in deep space between star systems, weeks away from the nearest inhabited world. The Meridian's automated distress beacon would take days to reach anyone, and by then their air would be gone. He found Vexus in her cabin, calmly reading from a datapad despite the blaring alarms. "We have a problem," Kai said. "I gathered as much from the theatrical lighting," she replied, setting down the pad. "How bad?" "Bad. 3 days of life support, maybe less if the backup systems fail." He hesitated, then made a decision that would have horrified his superiors. "I'm removing your shackles. If we're going to die out here, it won't be with you in chains." The energy restraints dissolved with a soft chime. Vexus flexed her hands, working circulation back into her wrists. "Thank you. What can I do to help?" For the next 18 hours, they worked together with desperate efficiency. Vexus proved to have an intuitive understanding of fusion reactors that complemented Kai's training in ship systems. They rerouted power, bypassed damaged circuits, and cannibalized non-essential systems to keep life support running. It was during the second day, while they were squeezed together in a maintenance crawlway replacing a burned-out power coupling, that everything changed. "Hand me the plasma torch," Kai said, sweat dripping despite the ship's increasingly cold air. As Vexus passed him the tool, their hands touched, not the brief contact of necessity, but a lingering moment where neither pulled away. Her skin was warm, softer than he'd expected, and he found himself studying the intricate patterns that spiraled along her fingers. "Kai," she said softly, using his first name for the first time. "If we don't make it out of this, we will," he interrupted. "If we don't," she continued, "I need you to know something. These past weeks, talking with you, seeing the man behind the uniform, it's been the first peace I've known since the war began." Their faces were inches apart in the cramped space, her opalescent eyes reflecting the torch's blue flame. "Vexus, I know it's impossible. I know what I am, what I've done. But for the first time in years, I feel human." "Is that The right word? Instead of answering, Kai reached up and touched her cheek. Her skin was fever-warm, and she leaned into his palm with a sigh that sounded like surrender. "You're not a monster," he whispered. "Neither of us are. We're just soldiers who got lost in a war that never should have happened." The kiss happened, without conscious decision, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as they gave in to weeks of growing connection. Her lips tasted of the bitter tea she preferred, and when they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This is insane," Kai murmured, against her forehead. "Yes," Vexus agreed. But she didn't pull away. They finished the repairs in charged silence, every accidental touch electric with new possibility. When the ship's systems finally stabilized and the lights returned to normal, they found themselves alone in the observation lounge. The crisis passed, but its emotional aftermath still crackling between them. "I need to tell you something," Kai said, pacing to the viewport. "The night before Europa colony fell, Mira sent me a message. She said she'd been talking to some Drakmari scientists through underground channels, refugees who wanted to share terraforming knowledge for peaceful purposes." Vexus went very still. "That's impossible." She was trying to build bridges, Vexus. Even in the middle of a war, she believed both species could work together. He turned to face her. "She died believing in the same thing you were branded a traitor for attempting." Tears, he hadn't known Drakmari could cry, started falling down Vexus's cheeks. "Those scientists, they were Thex's research team. They reached out against my explicit orders. I was furious when I learned of it. The revelation hit them both like a physical blow. Their loved ones had been trying to build the peace that they themselves had found in this ship, in this impossible space between hatred and understanding. We've been fighting the wrong war," Vexus whispered. Kai crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "Then let's fight the right one." That night, as the ship's automated systems carried them steadily toward Drakmari Prime, they held each other in the observation lounge and watched the stars. They talked about their dreams, not the nightmares that had haunted them, but the real dreams they'd abandoned when the war began. Kai spoke of wanting to explore unknown worlds, to be the first human to walk on alien soil in friendship rather than conquest. Vexus shared her vision of multi-species research stations, places where different forms of consciousness could collaborate to unlock the universe's secrets. When they made love, it was with the desperate tenderness of two people who had found light in darkness, who knew that what they had was fragile and probably doomed but chose to cherish it anyway. Her alien body fit against his with surprising naturalness, and when she whispered his name in the harmonic cadences of her native tongue, it sounded like poetry about starlight reaching across impossible distances. Afterward, as she slept in his arms, Kai stared out at the approaching star that would seal her fate, and made a decision that would change everything. Drakmari Prime hung before them like a jewel of blue-silver light, its 3 moons casting complex shadows across the planet's crystalline cities. The Meridian had been escorted by a full squadron of Drakmari warships for the last 2 days of their journey, a grim reminder that despite the fragile peace, trust between their species remained thin. Kai stood on the command deck, watching their destination grow larger, while Vexus sat in the observation lounge under guard. The energy shackles had been restored as they entered Drakmari space. Though Kai had fought the decision until the last possible moment, the comm system crackled to life with an incoming transmission. "Human vessel, this is Drakmari Command. You will dock at Justice Platform 7 in approximately 4 hours. The prisoner will be transferred immediately upon arrival." "Acknowledged," Kai replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. 4 hours. 4 hours until Vexus walked to her death, and he returned to Earth to file his final report and fade into civilian obscurity. The thought made him physically ill. He found her exactly where he'd left her, staring out at her homeworld with an expression of profound sadness. The guards had given them privacy, a small mercy perhaps, or simply the recognition that escape was impossible this close to the Drakmari fleet. "It's beautiful," she said without turning around. "I'd forgotten how beautiful it was." "Tell me about it," Kai said, settling beside her. The capital city is built inside a natural crystal formation that amplifies sound. When the wind blows through it, the entire city sings. Her voice carried a wistful note. Thex and I used to walk the resonance gardens in the evening, listening to the harmonies shift with the weather patterns. You don't have to do this, Kai said suddenly. There are options. Political asylum, witness protection. Kai. She turned to face him, her opalescent eyes bright with unshed tears. We both know that's impossible. My people need to see justice done, just as yours needed to see me captured. Some wounds can only heal through sacrifice. And what about us? What about what we've found? Vexus reached up to touch his face, her fingertips tracing the line of his jaw. What we found was a gift, something neither of us expected or deserved. But it doesn't change what I am, what I've done. It changes everything. Kai stood abruptly, pacing to the viewport. You're not the same person who ordered the attack on Europa Colony. The woman I've come to know, the woman I've fallen in love with, she would never have made that choice. Love? The word escaped her lips like a prayer. Kai turned back to her, his heart hammering. Yes, I love you, Vexus. I love your brilliant mind, your courage, the way you sing to the stars when you think no one is listening. I love the woman you've become through pain and regret, and the desperate desire to do better. She was crying, openly now, the tears falling like liquid starlight down her cheeks. I love you too, more than I thought possible, more than I have any right to. They clung to each other then, knowing it might be the last time. Her lips were warm and soft against his, tasting of salt and sorrow and desperate hope. There is another way, Kai whispered against her ear. No, Vexus said firmly, pulling back to look at him. Whatever you're thinking, no. I won't let you. Destroy your life for me. My life? Kai laughed bitterly. What life? My sister is dead. My career is ending. My species is scattered across the galaxy trying to rebuild from a war that accomplished nothing. You are the only meaningful thing I've found in years of meaningless existence. Kai, please. I've been in contact with Drakmari peace activists through encrypted channels, he continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. There's an underground network of people from both species working toward real reconciliation. They can get us out, get us somewhere safe. You contacted when? Vexus looked stunned. 2 days ago, after the reactor crisis. I realized I couldn't let you die. Not when you represent everything our people could become if they stopped fighting. You should have let me go. Vexus whispered, her voice breaking. You should have let me face my fate with dignity instead of dragging you down with me. This isn't about dignity, Kai said fiercely. This is about choosing love over hate, hope over revenge, the future over the past. If we run together, if we build something new, if we run, we become fugitives, outcasts. Neither human nor Drakmari will trust us. Then we'll find others like us. Build new communities, new alliances. Prove that peace is possible not through treaties signed by politicians but through ordinary people choosing to love instead of hate. The comm system crackled again. Attention Meridian, you are cleared for docking. Prisoner transfer will commence in 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Kai looked into Vexus's opalescent eyes and saw his own desperation reflected there. I can't ask you to do this, she whispered. You're not asking, I'm choosing. He took her hands in his, energy shackles and all. The question is, will you choose it too? For a long moment she stared out at her homeworld, at the crystal cities where she had once walked with her bondmate, at the place where her people waited to see justice done. Then she looked back at Kai, and in her alien features he saw a decision forming. When? She asked quietly. During the transfer. I've studied the schematics of Justice Platform 7. There's a maintenance corridor that leads to an abandoned docking bay. If we can reach it, we'll be running for the rest of our lives. Yes, Kai said simply, but we'll be running together. Vexus closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they blazed with determination. Then we'd better make sure we don't get caught. The transfer began exactly on schedule. Kai walked beside Vexus through the umbilical connecting the meridian to Justice Platform 7, her energy shackles humming softly in the recycled air. 6 Drakmari guards flanked them, their ceremonial weapons gleaming under the harsh corridor lighting. To any observer, it was a routine prisoner handover, the final act of a war's-long conclusion. Kai's heart hammered against his ribs as they approached the junction he'd memorized from the station schematics. 15 more steps. 10. 5. Now, he whispered. The electromagnetic pulse grenade he'd concealed in his diplomatic pouch detonated with a soft pop, and every electronic system within 50 meters died instantly. Emergency lighting flickered on as Vexus's shackles fell away, clattering to the deck plates. "Go!" Kai shouted, grabbing her hand. They ran through corridors suddenly filled with alarm klaxons and confused shouts. Behind them, the guards' weapons, discharged uselessly, their targeting systems fried by the EMP. Kai had studied the platform's layout obsessively, and now that knowledge paid off as he led them through a maze of maintenance tunnels and service corridors. The docking bay should be just ahead, he panted, consulting a physical map, one of the few technologies unaffected by electromagnetic disruption. They burst through a sealed hatch into a chamber that hadn't seen use in decades. Dust motes danced in the emergency lighting, and in the center of the bay sat their salvation. A small courier ship, exactly where Kai's underground contacts had promised it would be. "Can you pilot it?" Vexus asked as they ran toward the vessel. "We're about to find out." The ship's engines came to life with a reassuring hum, its systems hardened against EMP, another gift from their mysterious allies. Through the viewport, Kai could see Drakmari security forces spreading through the platform, like antibodies responding to an infection. "Kai," Vexus said urgently, "the docking bay doors. They're sealed." He looked up at the massive blast doors that separated them from space. Of course. Even if the platform's computer systems were offline, the doors would default to a locked position. They were trapped. Then the impossible happened. The doors began to open with ponderous mechanical precision, revealing the star-filled void beyond. "Friends of yours?" Vexus asked, settling into the co-pilot's seat. "I hope so," Kai replied, engaging the engines. They shot out of the docking bay just as the first security ships rounded the platform's curve. The courier vessel was fast and nimble, but they were facing an entire fleet. Energy beams lanced past, their hull as Kai threw the ship into evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible in a larger vessel. "There," Vexus pointed to a gap in the defensive perimeter. "If we can reach that asteroid field, I see it." Kai pushed the engines beyond their rated capacity, feeling the ship strain around them. More weapons fire bracketed their position, and one beam grazed their starboard stabilizer. The ship shuddered but held together. They reached the asteroid field with Drakmari fighters in hot pursuit, but the rocky maze provided cover that their enemies couldn't match. Kai threaded the courier ship between tumbling boulders the size of cities, using gravitational slingshots and micro-jumps that would have been suicidal in anything larger. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, they emerged on the far side of the field. The Drakmari ships had given up the chase, or perhaps lost them in the maze of stone and ice. "Where are we going?" Vexus asked as Kai programmed coordinates into the navigation system. "Sanctuary Station. It's a neutral research facility in unclaimed space, run by scientists from a dozen different species. Our contacts say they're sympathetic to refugees." As they entered hyperspace, leaving Drakmari Prime and its vengeful fleets far behind, Kai activated the ship's communications array. He had one more task to complete, perhaps the most important one. "This is Commander Kai Thorne," he said into the recorder, his voice steady despite everything they'd been through. "I'm broadcasting on all frequencies, human and Drakmari. 6 hours ago I helped strategist Vexus Nalith escape from custody. I want to explain why." Beside him, Vexus watched with wide eyes as he continued. "For 3 weeks I've traveled with the woman who orchestrated the attack that killed my sister. I expected to find a monster. Instead, I found someone carrying the same guilt, the same pain, the same desperate wish that the war had never happened. I found someone who had lost just as much as I had, who regretted just as deeply, who wanted peace just as desperately. He paused, looking at Vexus, then back at the recorder. Our species have spent years learning to hate each other, to see only enemies where we might have found friends. But hatred is a choice, just as love is a choice. Vengeance is a choice, just as forgiveness is a choice. Today, I choose love. I choose to believe that the future can be different from the past. The message would reach both human and Drakmari networks within hours, spreading across the galaxy like ripples from a dropped stone. Some would call it treason. Others might call it hope. Vexus and I are living proof that former enemies can become something more. We're starting a new life together, and we invite others to join us. Humans and Drakmari who are tired of fighting, who want to build something better than the hatred that has defined us. When he finished recording, Kai found Vexus staring at him with an expression of wonder. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, she said, or the most foolish. Probably both, Kai admitted, taking her hand. Any regrets? She interlaced their fingers, human and alien skin warming against each other. Only that we waited so long to find each other. The ship's navigation system chimed softly, indicating they were approaching their destination. Through the viewport, Sanctuary Station appeared as a brilliant cluster of lights against the cosmic dark, a place where different species worked together, where the future they had imagined might actually be possible. This isn't a goodbye, Kai said, echoing words he had spoken in a dream that now felt like prophecy. No, Vexus agreed, her opalescent eyes reflecting starlight and infinite possibility. This is a beginning. As their ship docked at Sanctuary Station, they knew they would face challenges ahead. There would be those on both sides who saw them as traitors, who preferred the familiar comfort of old hatreds to the uncertain promise of new connections. But they also knew they weren't alone. Across the galaxy, their message was being heard by others who had grown tired of war, who dreamed of a universe where love could bridge any distance, any difference. Their love had become a symbol, proof, that even the vastest chasms could be crossed by two people willing to reach for each other across the dark. And in a galaxy still healing from war, that symbol blazed like a beacon, calling other wanderers home to hope.